Ready to roll?
Rolling.
Rolling. Hi everybody, welcome back. We haven't been before people in a really long time. We had one meeting back in December when we all took office and then went back online for COVID. Budget talks, COVID works well because it helps more people come to the meetings and we appreciate the participation, but it's sometimes really helpful to sit around a table and have live conversation with human beings. So tonight, as we work through budget, we're here at Village Hall, and the recording of this meeting will be placed on the Village YouTube channel tomorrow. So the first item is opportunity to request a vote to add or modify agenda items. I would like to add an item under 3 project updates. I'd like to add skate park. That is my motion to add. Second?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks. For the public's benefit, when we modify the agenda after 5 o'clock on Monday, we modify it only by vote. Okay, so the first item was, we were just chatting about very quickly, New York State notifies the village when there's a liquor license application. There is one for Foundry Rose, the successor restaurant that will come in at the Foundry. I'm told that some of the recipes are going to be carried over from Jeff into the new restaurant, which is exciting because I'm hoping one's French toast. So this is not something that the village votes on, it's advisory. Catherine, you noted what?
I noted on the application that they did not include outside, and there are tables outside, and they would like to do that, so I guess they'll just renotice the state liquor authority on that regard.
And then it goes to the state from here. We don't have any part in that. Just in the community now. Okay, thanks. Project updates. I'm going to try to go reasonably quickly because we have a ton of stuff to go through. So there's been a lot of questions about dockside. I did not realize that in one of the windstorms, the state had installed a project board to explain what was happening there. I didn't realize that it was gone in the wind. So it has been down, so people have not had the opportunity to see on site what's going on. A quick recap, it's a state property. Dockside is a state property. It's owned by the state. This is a state project. It's not a village-driven project. Since 2018, the village has had a management agreement for Dockside, but we do not own the property. And the agreement is quite one-sided. It's very restrictive on what the village can do on the site without the state's consent, but there's not a ton of accountability back from the state to us, and that's one of the things I hope at some point we can revisit with the state is the terms of that lease. So the current project is a shoreline stabilization project that's meant to naturalize and harden the shoreline against inundation and storm damage. And the state's public process for this project actually took place back between 2013 and 2015. So it's a long time ago, and they're carrying out a project based on feedback from quite some time ago, which I think, some of us have some concerns about. A lot of changes have taken place in the village, and the state didn't do a great job of messaging around the project before it got off the ground in December. Suddenly they were here, so folks were caught by surprise. And I am in reasonably frequent contact with state parks and the DEC, but there continue to be surprises. We were a bit surprised by the trees. The tree advisory board was not surprised. They knew that those trees, I thought Jen would be with us. They knew that the trees there were disease conditions in the trees. I think that Jen is coming, so if she doesn't, I'll skip the tree issue for now, and if she comes, let her speak to it, and if she doesn't, I can further. This might be her. So I'll hit the other issues. So the 3 things that folks have been asking questions about are trees, vehicular access, and what is identified on the construction drawings as a boat launch. So first, regarding roads. There has always been a gravel pathway, or as long as it's been a park, there's been a gravel pathway through the park. It is fortified now with item number, whatever, the large stone that's on the pathway so that the construction vehicles don't do a ton of damage while they're going in and out. That will be removed and the gravel path will be restored, and then other areas that have been modified as roadways will be restored, topsoiled, and seeded, and there will be no parking on Dockside. There will be We have asked for a gate. We've asked the state to assist with a gate, so there's proper vehicular restriction on the site. I'm working on this now. With parks, we need to approach the property owner whose private property sits between village property and the state's property. But, you know, obviously a chain isn't doing it. And the reason that's of concern is that, as I said, the construction drawings show what's labeled a boat launch at the north end of the park. The state's position in the public comment session that we had, and the report that they made, was that a boat launch used to exist on the site, and that they're restoring the launch per public comment back in that period of 2013 to 2015. That's a long time ago, and a lot of things have changed in the village since then, including the numbers of people that we have moving through the village and moving through Dockside. In that session, questions were raised about the potential for the boat launch to generate traffic and issues with people dropping off boats to walk out to the boat launch there. The state does not share that concern. Linda Cooper, who is the head of the parks, the Hudson Highlands region, said that it's not intended as a boat launch, it's intended as a pull-off, which is very different than the conversation we had not so long ago. As a pull-off for small craft on the river that may need a resting point or safe harbor in inclement weather. So I would like to have further conversation with the state on this. I mean, that's a big shift, and the potential for impacts on that intersection are real. And I think people have raised legitimate concerns. So what I wanted to ask would the board be comfortable with requesting further conversation with Linda, further public conversation with Linda on that topic?
Absolutely, it doesn't sound like what they said in the video
yeah.
At all.
Yeah, and I think there was a fair amount of public concern about how the signage would express what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that having more clarity and a voice as a village on that topic would be helpful.
I mean, the language of converting boat launch to boat pull-off doesn't mean anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna park their boat, and if they're there to rest, I mean, what does that mean? They're resting, they're parking their boat, they're going to the village to have lunch, and the boat's sitting there, and does that mean the village now enforces this? And who's gonna enforce it?
Yeah.
It
There's
just
just a
doesn't make
lot.
sense. And then the whole concept of dropping your boat off, I mean, you're gonna have to stop right there, and you're gonna stop all that traffic, which is crazy on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make sense. And there are other boat launches, I believe, in the area that are probably easier accessible.
Yeah,
There's one right in the train station.
Yeah, I
Foundry
don't
Cove.
know how many boat
Right.
launches we
Foundry
need
Cove.
for that purpose,
Foundry
and I don't know how many places you need to rest your boat. I'm not a boater per se, but there's a lot of things that don't make sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I will request her to come back in then and talk to everybody. Okay. Short-term rental update. Hi, Phil. I can't guess why you're here.
No, I would have come in.
Couple things. We
This is the
have,
first meeting you've had in public
I know, it's
for
great, right?
like a million years.
Nice to see you.
So we have received a number
Always
of
nice.
complaints regarding the operation of short-term rentals. We are, to the best of our ability, under the mess that is the current law, trying to follow up with operators and property owners. It is a mess. The enforcement sits with police, and it's not a criminal matter, it's a civil matter, all sorts of elements of this. As we suggested a few weeks ago, we asked the village attorney to draft a moratorium. I've sent the draft around for folks to look at. I think it would be much more effective to have a conversation. So I've scheduled a session for advice from council for next Wednesday at 6, the hour before our budget meeting. Does that work for everybody?
Yep, that's
Okay. And
Yeah,
it's
but-
not Jen coming in, right?
So on 3:30, we're here at 6 p.m.
Yeah, we'll do an executive session to seek advice of council and then go into the budget conversation.
Kathleen, just correct, it's a closed session.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jeff.
So I'm legally recused from short-term rentals because I have a permit.
Yep.
I'm issuing a letter to the clerk tomorrow asking if I can be unrecused and revoke my permit so I
So that
can
you can
participate in the
participate.
conversation. It seems to be a fairly
Hi.
significant conversation, so
It'd be great to have
my
you.
rental income I'll defer to next year.
That'd be great to have you
And
bring
I'll
to the
help
table.
participate in whatever capacity I can.
Awesome. Thanks. I just finished dockside, so do you want to do
Okay.
the tree part?
Sure.
Thank you. Good
I
to see you.
apologize. I was sitting on Zoom. Luckily, I live 4 blocks away. I literally was sitting on Zoom, like, what's going on? It's
You
5
zoomed
minutes
in.
late. Like, yeah. So I'm very sorry.
No problem.
I didn't hear what you said about
So,
that.
so for the public, this is Jen Zorick, who's the chair of the tree advisory board for the village. I skipped the topic of trees.
Okay.
I talked about the roadways, the proposed boat launch / pull off conversations we've had about a gate, and said that I would leave the content expertise to you about trees, for why trees came down, what we knew,
Okay,
when
great.
we knew, and what
Can I just
happens
sit here
next.
and talk?
No, you can come to the table if you want.
Since I'm other people here. Great. So thank you for letting me come talk. And this is the first time I've seen all of you guys together, so it's wonderful. Hopefully the members of the public have seen the explanation that the village put out about the trees. And I understand that there's been some concerns. I've actually gotten a few emails as well, which I expected. And I just wanted to reassure everyone that there was absolutely no question about those trees, and the village, even though this is not village property and we had no say in what was going to happen to these trees, these are not our trees, the Parks Department did collaborate with us and gave us a chance to have our arborist look at the trees as well to confirm what their arborist said. So we did our due diligence, which to my mind is the most important thing that we can do as a tree board in the village, is to protect trees that we all enjoy by making sure we get a second opinion, etc. But the gist of it was that those trees that came down were in a very bad state of decay, and there was no question that they had to come down. And the good news is Parks has committed to replanting in the same area. That was important to me, in the same grove area, to replace the grove, which is, not great because they won't grow immediately, but they will grow, and so they'll be replaced. So that's the gist of it. I don't know if you guys had any questions about it anyway.
Are there any, like the types of trees that they're replacing them with? Because I know that there have been a couple comments about what was there were invasive species, not actual native species.
Right, that's true. That's, I think that they're planning, I understand that they're planning on planting native species. From the village's point of view, I'm kind of in the middle of the Native Species, like Non-Native Species Act, and we have a lot of invasive species that are street trees, and they were later deemed to be invasive species, and so as a policy, we don't like to just remove a tree because it's an invasive species. So these were invasive species. They were almost, all of them were Norway maples, and one of them was a black locust that had heartwood rot, which is not gonna recover from. So the Parks Department is very keen on planting natives, and so that's what they're going to replace it with, which everybody loves, and it's great. But I just wanted to clarify that that's not why they were removed. They were removed because they were diseased, and several of them were literally just about to just fall apart. And I know that there was some concerns. I got a couple emails about how the trees looked. I don't know if anyone is here. Some of them, especially my favorite one that I've enjoyed for 15 years, these trees can have full canopy of leaves and still be just about to fall apart. The trees only need about an inch around the outside, like a ring, to continue to get their leaves to come out, which means that the middle of a tree can be completely hollow and super dangerous, but the tree can still look to an unprofessional eye, like it still has a canopy and we can still enjoy it. So they had to poke and prod and do those kind of things to diagnose them. And that's what was done. So
That's really useful.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't answer that question when people asked, what the trees were
No.
moving? Yeah.
No, and I think the most important thing for everyone to understand is that the reason that we have a tree advisory board, and Catherine was here before we had a tree advisory
Yeah.
board, so she remembers, is that we have professionals or volunteers, and we actually have a certified arborist on the board who's volunteering his time, and a certified horticulturalist who's a professional. You have all these people donating their time to the village to make sure that trees aren't taken down for no reason, and to organize planting more trees and to care for the trees that we have. And so I think we're really lucky as a village. This particular dockside removals It's sort of like the Parrott Street removals that had to happen. It's super sad and nobody wanted to see it happen, but I can guarantee you that we definitely did all of our work on it, and they definitely had to come down. There was no question in my mind. So you can send all the letters to me, and I'd be happy to reply to people individually if people have more questions about it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything for Jen before she heads out?
Thanks for all you do.
I think it's a
Okay.
great committee. I mean, it's
Yeah.
absolutely a
Yeah.
fabulous
Thank you.
resource to
Yeah.
have.
Thank you.
That in a small town like this.
Right, we're
Yeah,
lucky.
fabulous.
We're so lucky to have you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
Sorry you had to run.
Great.
And thank you for making it.
Jen,
Sorry.
just need to grab you for a second.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay, keep going.
okay. Other quick updates. We're almost there. Michelle, NYSERDA. NYSERDA is the funding source that moved the code update forward. There is a chunk of the code update left that was not finished by the previous board, and we need to finish. It is not a small project in the state that it was left, and getting that done by March 31st with a thorough public process was not going to happen. And it's not something that we wanted to rush or we wanted to shortchange public comment on. Bye, Jen. So we have written to NYSERDA and requested an extension to the end of the year so that we can do it properly. We have not heard back yet, but initial indications from the staff are positive. And we have also consulted with Ted Fink, he is a consulting planner, to identify the areas of concern in 134 and have him advise approaches. So to those particular areas. And it's not just 134, it's 3 chapters, 134 zoning, 76 noise, and 104 signage, and they depend on decisions that are made in the zoning chapter. So once we hear from NYSERDA, we'll share around the recommendations that were made by Ted Fink and start that public process in earnest to get that out of the way, keep ticking boxes off. The last project update is brand new, just came in, I don't know, this week's been kind of a blur, but I think it was yesterday, maybe it was Monday. Back pre-COVID, as everything was, there was a class at Haldane. There is still a class at Haldane called Design, Innovate, and Create. Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. 6th and 7th graders. And a proposal was put forward by a class in 2018 for a skate park at Mayor's Park. The proposal was well received by the then configuration of trustees. It was referred to the Rec Commission. There were some conversations. There was some soil testing. Hi, Patrick. There was some soil testing and sort of an exploration for where that might safely go. And then COVID happened, and it died. And the kids were deeply disappointed, and the next generation of 6th and 7th graders would like to revive the proposal. So, because it's all the cast of characters has completely changed since then, I've asked the teachers, Heidi Gessen, to contact Jeff to schedule a workshop where we can invite also the tree board and the rec commission to have a full conversation and start that process again. They're committed to fundraising. They have parent support. That's that.
So just on that topic quickly,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great idea, and the fact that it's student driven is even better than great. We had a conversation a while ago, and you had an idea about the creation of a Friends of Cold Spring Parks type 501c3, which I thought was fabulous. That's something I think we should really try to facilitate, and if we accomplish anything in this year, that could be the biggest thing that we do. As an opportunity to take like your Tots Park, your Dockside, your Mayor's Park, your Gazebo Park, / whatever it's called nowadays.
Bandstand.
Band all that stuff together and seek out additional revenues, grant writing, and it's a natural for this type of community. And
Absolutely.
I think that's something that we should help facilitate. I'd be happy to assist in that. I've been on a couple of foundation boards, and I think we could get some key people to just get it started. And I think that could be something that could really alter the future of the village significantly.
I agree.
So I think that fits perfectly in with the skate park.
I think, I love that idea. I also think that, when we talk about mental health constantly as a community, and we have issues where kids are using drugs instead of going outside. Creating spaces that are specifically for our teens is really important. And I think we've created certain spaces for kids who like sports and kids who like theater. We've created even some for visual arts, but here's a project that would facilitate for a group that is underserved currently. And no matter how we fund it, whether it's through, parking meter fees or through a foundation, which is a great idea too, I think this is something that the community should get behind because it is definitely a void that we're missing. There's no place for our teens to hang out if they are not in organized activities already. So I totally support it.
It's worth, I think, looking at the Friends of the Top Park is established as a 501c3 to see if there's maybe the potential to expand the scope of that 501c3. It's already receiving donations, et cetera, so.
Yeah, there's a million ways to go with it.
Yep.
All good.
Okay, now, the next item is approving quotes. We have some improvements that need to happen at the water plant and the wastewater plant. We're trying to get them taken care of this budget year before we go into new budget. Michelle Ascolillo is the village treasurer and accountant. I've asked her to come because I can only explain so well on these items and she has a much better grasp. Hi.
Hello. Okay. Just had my papers.
I have one question before we start.
Yes.
Are these the only quotes we got? Or
It's
these were the quotes that you felt were,
So, let's start with the water department. So at the water department, Matt is requesting to replace 5 chemical feed pumps. They are the Grunfos. It's part of the plant. Things need to be replaced. He wants them all to be uniformed. These specific chemical feed pumps have the capabilities to be monitored remotely. So if something's off, instead of having to drive in, manually do it, he could do it from the computer all hours of the night. 2 of them currently have the capability, so they're a replacement in kind, and the other 3 will have the capability, and part 2 of the project is to get a little bit of electrical work done to get it onto the system. These pumps we've gotten 3 quotes. One was more expensive, one was slightly cheaper, but it came from an online order 6 to 8 weeks, and that's it. They just drop it and go. The quote here, the ESC quote, that's a little higher, includes hand delivery in 2 to 3 weeks, plus labor, expertise, knowledge of helping Matt install it over 1 to 2 day period. So apples to apples, the pump price might be a little more expensive, but if you count the labor component, the other 2 quotes can't offer that. ESC is the regional sales rep. He's the only one that can offer that kind of assistance in the area. So Matt's requesting to go with ESC with that caveat of why it's not the lowest.
That's the 15, hopefully 16.
ESC is 11,000.
I gave you my papers. Okay, so that's the first.
So that's the water plant.
Mm-hmm.
If we can we make a decision on the water plant
Sure.
before we move to the sewer plant?
Well, I would make a motion to approve.
second.
All in favor?
All right.
Let's get it done.
So
Been
now
sitting
on
for too long.
the sewer side, the wastewater plant, there's 3 components. So 2 parts are equipment. One piece of equipment is to repair the auger. The auger helps grind up solid waste. The auger itself is functional, but the gearboxes, the motor, that needs to be replaced. That is the 9,000 for the gearbox and the motor. These are things that have already been broken, so the auger's not in operation. We need to purchase the motor and the gearbox in order to get the auger back in service. This company is a sole source. There's only 1 sales rep in all of New York and half of New Jersey. It's a true sole source. We have to buy JWC equipment to match the equipment that's in the plant without redoing the entire plant. To go along with this is the the cutter box. So this is the $16,000 quote. It's just for a piece of equipment to repair. It's a grinder, so the teeth are over 10 years old. It's not working well. It's on its way out. Matt thinks in the next week or so it really might be. So now if you have both of these pieces not working, then you have nothing to break up solids in the sewage plant. Same thing, JWC, sole source. The motor is okay on this piece. This is the actual parts that need to be replaced. So those are the two that are on the table for tonight. Matt submitted a quote for labor, $2,500 a day. To install these two together would be about 4 to 6 days. But he's working on other quotes because the labor is not sole source. There's a few, but a couple other people relatively in the area that he's trying to reach out to. So he would at least like to purchase the equipment because there's a minimum of a 4-week lead time on it. And be something, we talk about starting improvements that we can before May 31st, and purchasing the equipment for this would be a goal, moving towards that goal.
So we're looking to move forward the equipment and parts purchases and table the labor until
Yes.
we have more, 2 more quotes.
Which Matt's reaching out to 2 other people he has in mind, he said in the next day or so. So hopefully by next week, at worst 2 more meetings, we should be able to have labor on the table.
And another issue that's been of concern with the auger looks like a big giant drill. And so there's one part inside the sewer plant that does a first grind, and then the auger grinds the next to get solids into smaller and smaller bits until it moves on and is filtered out before the water's released to the river. It makes the auger has made a terrible noise, which has been really problematic for the folks who live across the street. So we're hoping that the repair on the auger solves a piece of the noise issue, and then we're working on solving the other sound issue that's happening in the building behind. So with that in mind, would someone like to make a motion?
Can I just ask a question real
Go
quick?
ahead.
Would the funds for this come out of the fund balance, or is it in the budget from this past year?
So for this current year that we're in, there was no fund balance allocated, but there are lines that have savings, like we didn't do any engineering, or there was another project that Matt had wanted to do, cleaning out some of the sewer lines, like jetting them, so we didn't get to that. So between those 2 lines and some savings in equipment, we could pay for it without touching fund balance. It's all in the budget.
Okay, great.
From the water and wastewater fund balance, not
Sewer, right, from sewer only for this, and then the water, there's enough in the equipment to handle the feed pumps.
Okay.
So if I understand it correctly,
Yes.
back in October, Matt had put together a bunch of capital improvement lists for both sites?
Yes, a 2-page document.
Right, these are all part of that, right?
Yes,
So this is kind of like a working document
Yes.
that we're chipping away at that list.
Yes.
Got it. I'm slowly learning wastewater and water language, it's a foreign language.
I apologized to Matt today, and he said it's okay, learning another language is hard. Okay, so any other discussion before a motion?
No.
Would someone like to make it?
I'll make a motion to accept repairing auger and cutter box at the wastewater treatment plant from budgeted funds.
Second.
Is that right?
Yep, all in favor?
Aye.
And a motion to table, I'll motion to table the labor portion. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. It's good to see forward motion, and I hope that the grinder holds out until the parts get here.
Careful what you put
I-
in the,
We put me in the ether. Okay, the next is also department consideration. So, there had not been performance appraisals done on village employees other than the water department, kind of ever. There were a couple of times it was attempted at highway and sewer, and I think that makes assessment of employees and awarding of raises arbitrary. So this board set out to do that. We did it for all village employees. And we would like to, as merit awards, recognize 2 members of the highway department, Corey Thomas and Kyle Van Tassel. Kyle just finished his 6-month probationary period, and he has performed well, and he is learning rapidly and wants to learn more. Corey has stepped up twice as acting crew chief when Bugsy was sick or out with an injury, and they've they've really given it their all, and I will say that in the last 2 weeks since we've been able to ditch garbage to Royal, the guys have been out on the street every day. You probably saw the vines, like the most obvious thing is all the vines come off the roof on Village Hall. Potholes are getting filled. And so I would like to propose giving these two gentlemen a merit increase of $2 from this current budget period. There is no, where are my notes? There is no, that includes FICA, and there are no other fringe benefits in the current year. So that is my motion. Any discussion?
I think it's great. We want to keep our guys. They're doing really good work. They work really hard for us, and they're not being paid a market rate, so we're trying to get them up there so that we can keep them, because we don't want to lose our employees.
Yes.
And they
So-
seem like they're really excited. I
Yeah.
spent a half hour with Kyle at the firehouse the other day, and I hadn't really met him other than hello, how are you, how's it going kind of thing. And we had a nice conversation. He really is excited.
Yeah.
Wants to learn everything and anything. And sure, sure. You know, and as an employer, you love that in an employee. They just want to raise their hand.
I was watching them take the vines off of the building. I mean, there were 2 dump trucks
Yeah.
full of vines growing up the building, just eating the mortar. So, lest we have a pile of rubble, and they were having a good time doing it. You know, so I think they're really sensing our appreciation of what they do, and they're enthusiastic about what they do.
Excellent.
So they deserve all of our verbal and monetary comments.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank
Do
you.
you want to do this effective today, effective with the
Effective-
start of the next pay period?
When is the start of the next pay period?
Monday,
Sunday.
Sunday?
Sunday. So that's probably the cleanest way for you to handle it, right? Do I need to what's the word that I want?
No.
Refine the proposal, okay. Okay, now the one I suspect that, let's see, we've got, event parking at Mayor's Park first is item 6. So the strip of parking in front of Mayor's Park is now metered. It is our, oh, I started that and I didn't finish. Thank you. I'll come back to short-term rental. We started and got distracted to trees. Thank you, Eliza. So we'll finish up the Mayor's Park conversation. Yeah, so it was metered. I think there wasn't a lot of consideration about what to do with Haldane baseball, because Haldane baseball is there during the week for practices and games. Joe had a follow-up conversation with Haldane, and I can let everybody know what the outcome was.
Sure. So I met with Dr. Benate, who's the superintendent of Haldane, about a few other things unrelated. And just in our conversation, you know, I had said, you know, that there's parking meters down at Mayor's Park now, and I assume you guys are aware and have had conversations. Can you fill me in on what is the outcome of those? And he said, I have no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. So at the end of the day, push comes to shove, there are meters there. Haldane, starting next week, is going to start their baseball season. They use Mayor's Park. It's the only regulation baseball field in Phillipstown. They've been using it ever since I've been here, which is 25 years, and probably before that. We do have an agreement with Haldane where they mow the grass. They are going to start weed whacking around the fencing. They also do other remedial repairs as needed as it relates to baseball. And the question, I guess, before us is, do we exercise the parking meters for the Haldane parents while they come to watch the baseball games? Or is there some type of exemption for something like that? My guess, and I wasn't here, the intent of the parking meters at that space was more geared towards the tourists and the weekend heavy traffic, but I don't know, I wasn't part of those conversations. So, in speaking with the mayor, we probably have to come up with something so there can be some communication starting next week when baseball starts. There are 7 home varsity baseball games. There are 7 modified baseball games during the season. They start next week. They run till, beginning of May, and that's their season.
And there was only one on a Saturday. I think they were all
Correct, the rest
weekday
are Monday
games,
through Friday,
and it was a Saturday morning.
correct.
So it seems the simplest option would be to request that our officers not ticket our police officers, or when we have the parking enforcement officer coming on in the spring, that we ask that tickets not be issued for that lot during that time.
Do we put up a temporary sign of some sort? I mean, are we all in agreement that, we don't really wanna charge Haldane's families for playing ball? I think
Yeah.
that's, I hope that's where we are. So, you know, can a temporary sign be put up that says, for Haldane ball game events, ticketing or parking is free, just so that it's communicated to anybody, because there are many streams of communication, but there's always somebody who didn't get it.
Yeah.
And they'll show up and they'll be like, oh man, I've got to park and pay, and then, you know, they'll pay it. But we don't want them to do that, and we don't want them to feel that way, so.
Well, there can be
How do we communicate
communication
it?
from directly to the teams
Okay.
via, most of the teams are using some version of an app to communicate directly with families now, so that's one thing. I think if you're gonna put signs, you'd have to probably do it's a long lot.
Right, you have to do like 3 or 4 throughout the fence.
Yeah, we're back to multi-signs on the fence.
So I think, go ahead, sorry.
I think those meters, they can actually, I don't wanna say turned off,
No, but they can be programmed.
but they can be programmed to not take money at those hours.
For those spaces. Jeff would be able to answer that better than I can.
I'm sure they can be,
Yeah.
we'll have to
This way, it just,
check
I mean,
it out.
I go to NIAC, if it's the wrong time, it just doesn't, it says right on your phone, you don't have to pay now, or
Okay.
That would be ideal then,
if
because
that,
then we wouldn't need signs.
I think just from a process standpoint, no, I like process. Whatever we do decide, I think we should communicate that to the superintendent. He will communicate that to the coaches, who will communicate it to their
Yep.
parents, who will communicate it to the visiting team. So everybody's on the same page. I do think we probably should put up some simple temporary signs, even if it's an 8.5 by 11 laminated with screen ties in 7 places, so a parent who pulls up, who didn't get the memo, who didn't read the memo, pulls up and doesn't have a heart attack and scream and yell and start cursing at everybody within 10 feet of him. I used to coach Little League and I was on a Little League board. There are less things to get people wild. I don't think anybody needs that.
Right.
And then whatever is the more permanent solution, we can execute signage,
Yeah.
There is another little caveat to this, I think, that probably needs to go back to the rec. Little League, I believe, also uses Mayor's
Right.
Park infrequently. And that's something I think that needs to get flushed out as well. And then there was another caveat, which is rec was interested in trying to start up some softball leagues, basketball games for residents. How is that gonna work? So I think the Haldane piece probably is pretty simple initially. They're providing a service to us, we're providing them access to something, that seems to be pretty clear.
And it's time sensitive.
Yeah, and maybe rec takes this up at the next meeting, flush out some of these other groups that are using it and come up with some recommendations. Yeah, in an ideal world, all our fields in the county or in the community are owned by the town, the village, North Highlands Fire Department, and St. Basil's. Everybody should be on some kind of mutual agreement that if we're using each people's fields, because everybody doesn't have their own, there should be some kind of a reciprocal. That would be in an ideal world.
Well, I know that conversation is starting at the town level, so it's a good time to have communications about that.
Right.
It seems like we can get a calendar from the rec department and from the schools and the different teams on when they're gonna be playing, so we can give that to Park Mobile and say, turn it off at these days from these hours. And then a temporary signage that gives a general, like, for sporting events, like organized sporting events, parking is free, that we can put up on the fence, and then we can, you know, work through all the details with all the different teams and organizations.
Yeah, so that's the Haldane baseball schedule. As it currently stands, it changes frequently because of spring weather. Also, the playability. Mayor's Park isn't exactly perfect in the spring because of the wetness of the right field. So there are games that might get canceled just because they're not playable, depending on how often it rains. But that's a start, I think, at least. But I think us to Dr. Bonatti, he'll handle his side. We handle our side, which I guess would be the enforcement piece. And if we throw up a couple of temporary signs, you know,
Easy peasy.
we've got some pretty creative types on board.
And Larry said he would also post these upstairs so that the
Sure.
staff can see them. It's not the public comment period, Jane, but you're Jane, so I'm gonna let you ask your question.
Oh, no, no, I just have to speak for the community, I'm sorry. People do sometimes have parties there, and birthday parties, would they request not having to pay?
So that's part of when people do rent the park,
Parties?
they meet with the rec commission and work through those details with the rec
Okay.
commission, and then
Okay,
that comes forward to the trustees for approval.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, you were signaling me, had I forgotten something here? So I covered,
You did do that, sorry.
okay, that's
So
right.
we're okay with the Haldane piece?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. You wanna reach out to Dr. Bonatti? Do you want me to reach out to him, whoever?
Why don't you, since you started the conversation with
Sure,
him,
I'll reach out to him tonight.
cool, and maybe, I don't know if you're available to help with signs.
I can, yeah.
What are those
With
cool
something.
signs that you do?
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you can get it to me tomorrow, I'll have it
Flattering gets you
laminated, I'll screen
everywhere.
tie it, and I'll even
It'll
hang
be
it.
done.
Yeah, it's
I'll have it all
easy.
hung and
We
everything
can-
Friday
we can
morning when I
manage
go for
that.
my stroll.
Leagues. Okay. All right, now the main event that I assume everyone is here for, which is Railroad Avenue. So when the code update, chapter 126 is traffic, vehicles and traffic. And when that chapter was under review by the previous iteration of the board, there was a proposal to modify a number of two-way streets to one-way, or to change the direction of existing one-ways. And that got pulled. It's not entirely clear to me why that proposal got pulled, but it never got fleshed out. Railroad is a real problem because of truck traffic. We've got trucks going to the depot and coming down Main Street. They might be delivering at depot, maybe they're delivering further up, but they're going across the depot, then up Railroad, and between the pitch, the steepness of the slope, the narrowness because of the width of the street, but also cars on the street, it is super difficult to navigate that turn. It's just too small for trucks to be doing that. The question of changing the direction of the street doesn't necessarily address that problem, because you still would have big trucks going down, right, and trying to make that corner to go down the road. So Teresa Lagerman had sent, and Patrick also sent letters to say, could you please take up this discussion again? And so we're not going to solve this problem tonight, but I'm coming to the board to say, are we willing to continue discussion and come up with some options? Changing the roadway is something that will take a code change, which requires a public hearing. That's a longer process. I hope that we can talk about some shorter term things that can address the issue. One of the thoughts that I had was sort of mid-range, in addition to contemplating direction, is the way we handle Wall Street. There's a sign at Wall Street that's the very steep, sharp curve that comes out onto Kemble. There's a sign at the entrance to that street that says no trucks over X feet. Because when a truck goes down there, that's it, you're stuck. And it's kind of the same situation on Railroad. And I think that would be, for the truck traffic, a better option for resolving that issue, is potentially taking Stone, Cross, and Railroad, all of them, and saying no trucks on the street. Because you want to cut them off before they get to the point that they have to turn on Railroad. That's the problem. How you handle the other end is a different conversation that I think we can look at some temporary measures to try to relieve the short term. The depot is the primary recipient of the deliveries down there, and I'm wondering if we can't approach that business owner to communicate to vendors to, rather than pulling in, to pull straight down next to the visitor center, unload there with a hand truck, and then back the truck to turn around and come back up Main, rather than entering Depot and getting stuck on Depot and having to back all the way back to Main Street.
I can speak to the delivery part
Yeah.
because I
'Cause
get
you know it.
deliveries. You can ask a company to do whatever you need them to do, and they generally, I mean, people are parking over by Pascal and bringing stuff across the street to me. They have carts, they have all kinds of things. You can also ask your salesperson to ask them to bring a smaller truck into the village. And we don't need the biggest truck coming here, you know, they can, I mean, so, Ace Endico, we all buy from Ace Endico, or most of the people in the village do. They come almost every day except Saturday. You do have to have a minimum delivery to get them to come. But, you know, if they're coming every day, then they don't need to have the biggest truck and put all of it on the same day. They could use smaller trucks and, you know.
Do you have a relationship with the owner of that restaurant to have an initial conversation?
With Greg, sure. Absolutely.
That might be a place to start, to figure out if there's.
And our mutual salesperson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can do that, absolutely.
What's involved with putting up one of the signs that say, you know, no commercial vehicles over 24 feet, trucks are unable to negotiate the turn, which is Rock Street, I guess?
Yeah.
What's involved with that? Is that code? Is that just us getting a sign and putting it in the ground?
If it were only as simple as us getting a sign and putting it in the ground. So truck routes are truck routes and non-truck routes are code identified. So it has to be identified in the code. I would want to ask the question of the officer in charge, what can we do temporarily till the code is in place how can we legally warn trucks that this is a really bad spot to go? And I think we do need to get them before they get on Depot.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How much of the Depot Square there does the restaurant own?
A lot. I don't know exactly, but it's a chunk of spaces. Do you remember, Jeff?
No, but it's almost,
We only
It's
own
almost
like 4
all of
them,
spots
but
by
two.
the, like, 4 parking spots next to the visitor center, and the rest are all owned by Depot restaurant building owners.
What were you thinking?
No, I just, there are some trucks that come very early morning. I hear one backing up. It's not that early in the morning for me, but for some neighbors it's early.
So Phil lives right at the corner of Railroad and
Railroad
Stone.
Avenue.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is bigger now because of COVID, because there's so many packages being delivered to people's houses, and the trucks are bigger, so the UPS truck can't even make that turn, you know, and so it's a bigger problem now than it ever was.
I didn't even think about that.
Well, and I wonder
Amazon
about
has small
businesses
trucks,
like,
they could-
like understory, like, it's probably not only the Depot restaurant that's,
No, for
like, I'm
sure.
trying to think of the
No.
way trucks would get out if they didn't take that turn, and a 3-point turn is maybe one option, but it's like tricky. Yep.
If I may, it's not just the delivery trucks for both personal, packages and Greg's business, the Depot. I mean, most of his trucks actually make it in and out of there.
The pros.
Yeah, usually without a hiccup. It's usually the outlier 18-wheeler that comes down there. I'm familiar with the village that gets stuck on Railroad. As well, during the height of visitor season, it's the tourist buses. Those are the things that concern me.
There's no
the
reason
most.
for those buses to be on that road.
Yeah, I've had to guide a few out on my own, which is terrifying. That seems to be more of a problem. I mean, the danger of the delivery trucks is there, but it's really that halting that rhino before it comes around the corner.
Mhm.
That's really where the concern is, I think, from my party anyway.
I mean, for tourist buses, I mean, because of COVID, I personally haven't had them in a while, and I'm not open for lunch anymore, so I wouldn't. But I always worked with the person who was organizing the party and told them when they came down Main Street, they could stop like in front of Pink Olive, but they had to turn and go out Fair Street. They were not allowed to go
Mhm.
down any further because there was just no way to turn around. And yeah, they can, but three-point turn
You gotta
for a,
back out almost all the
no,
way.
it's a mess.
I mean, we're not gonna be able to stop, you can't fix stupid, right? And
Right.
you're not gonna be able to stop everybody who takes a vehicle that's too big on a narrow street.
Mhm.
It happens at the other end of the village on Parsonage, trucks bottom out and are stuck. But we need to do our best to reduce the numbers, and coming at it from a code approach is the long-term solution. I think a conversation with, I mean, when we think about who's getting deliveries in that bottom block, because once you're past Fair Street,
Hudson House would be the only one who's trying to get an 18.
They're going to the bottom end though, and they can,
they can turn around down there.
but I think that your point's well made, because it's, the delivery trucks who come regularly, they know their way around, they know how to get in and out. If they made that mistake once, they wouldn't do it twice.
Yeah.
So it's really those enormous trucks that are coming less frequently, and the tour buses, it sounds like the real problem.
Yeah, I mean, during the height of visitor season, the delivery trucks to the depot can cause, kind of congestion down there on Depot Square. But again, it's the bigger ones.
So, I mean, aside from the tour buses, which I think it's incumbent on anyone who has a tour coming to inform the tour operator,
Who sets up
Just,
tours coming to the village?
They just
The-
come, or do we know
No,
who's
okay,
coming?
so a group of people come to go to Magazzino and they wanna come and have lunch in the village. Whoever's organizing it, it can be a church, a synagogue, a garden club. So you're working with the individual that has that, that's putting the whole thing together. And, and I always say, I'll feed the driver, don't come down. It's upon, it's on the restaurants or whoever's hosting.
So
The
it sounds
party.
like we need better communication around
Yeah.
tour buses. I mean, you see West Point, periodically you see West Point tours coming through.
Yeah, I don't know how they.
The
Someone-
town of Greenberg, I know I've seen, and they've tried to get around onto Stone Street from Railroad Avenue.
Really.
And I think you and James Hartford had this issue last year on Furnace Street. He has photographs of the bus company. I assume-
Did. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what happened, is they made a bad choice and then
Right.
couldn't figure out how to get out of it. So tonight we need to do budget. My point is noted, figuring out what to do next.
There's just one more piece to the puzzle that I just wanted to bring up real quick. So besides the trucks, when, especially during the tourist season, as people drive up Railroad, they either miss or disregard the small one-way sign, and they turn on Stone to get back to Main Street, which is the wrong
All the
way.
time.
All the time.
It happens all the time.
So did
I'm
that
wondering-
drive the conversation about reversing the direction of the one-way?
I mean, that's, it's just part of it's such a small street railroad, but there's so many problems.
It is.
I am wondering if perhaps a simple solution, while this gets, explored further, would be to add a no right turn sign on top of the one-way on the stop. Because I think people see the stop sign and then they just, whatever,
I'm-
like run back to Main.
I'm sorry.
But we just see this all the time.
To kind of add on to that here, a lot of the signage, I know this is a general discussion about Railroad and the trucks specifically, but the signage on Railroad is pretty much ignored on both ends. Both stop signs are constantly
That's the
ignored.
challenge.
And, yeah, so for the longer conversation, I think that's the safety that we're all kind of on board for, is figuring out how to get people to pay attention.
One other thing, if you're driving a truck, it doesn't matter whether it's a Downey truck or Pedala truck, you can't make a left onto Railroad Avenue from Stone Street.
Without rolling over your guard.
What they do is, they go up the street, turn around up there, and then come down the wrong way.
Well, that's why I think we have to
Even
have
the
to
village truck,
redesignate.
The village
even the
truck
village
does
truck
that
does
with
that. The
garbage.
garbage truck, any truck that they're driving.
So Royal.
They come
Well,
down across, yeah. I ran into that.
Some street,
Royal
there
did
are
that.
there are a number of streets on the regular truck route where they have to, because of narrowness, go forward and back up. There's no avoiding it. We have to get garbage. But I think that if we do talk about a no truck designation, it has to hit Stone and Cross. The other thing that I want to put a pin in is, that is a useful loop going uphill for cars that get down there and can't figure out how to get back up the hill.
Well, you see a traffic jam there because they're all on their phones trying to figure out which way to go when they get to the top of Railroad Avenue. So, and then the cars start backing up.
And the other thing is when they can't find a parking space, they just park wherever.
On the wrong side.
On the wrong side. One day, a guy with a van, load of people, okay, parked at the top of Railroad Avenue, and they all had their lunches, and they got out and had their lunch on my wall. So, I mean,
And the
it
van
was okay.
stayed
I mean,
there, you know, the van
they
stayed
weren't there
there.
long,
Yeah,
but they parked like that.
yeah, and then with the empty building across the street,
Yes.
it's kind of compounded that problem as well.
So in terms of the action items for next steps, conversation with the officer in charge about the possibility for the additional signage that you're talking about. Can you work on the tour buses? Like what a strategy might be to work with tour buses?
Well, I mean, I think probably we could draft something to send to the restaurant owners.
Okay.
Has Larry been in the loop on this whole topic?
He was in the
Yeah.
previous iteration, but this is the first time we're talking about it
Okay.
now, so he needs to be brought
So he's
into
probably
the
a key
loop.
guy understanding traffic flow and what can be enforced and
Yeah.
signage and all that kind of stuff as
Exactly.
far
Catherine, could we maybe reach out to the chamber and so that we capture the loop of like the museums too, if there's tour?
Museum had, I mean, they have their own tour bus,
Right.
the magazine.
But if a tour is coming from elsewhere to them, and then
They
bringing
could.
people down to the
We can
video,
talk about
visitor,
it,
down
but
to
generally
the,
speaking, the
village.
people who come to Magazino, it's like 10 people,
they don't have the big
they,
bus.
you know.
Okay.
Okay, so, we're working on it, we'll report back, stay in touch, thanks for coming in.
That's all we can ask.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
it's a huge problem.
Jane,
Okay.
Jane has one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jane, I didn't hear you.
I'd like to ask for one more sign on Furnace Slow. People come off of Depot, up Furnace, like they're in a speed zone. They just turn that corner, and it's amazing that not everybody is killed.
The stop sign on the corner of Railroad Avenue is very high, so they don't even see it. They just keep going, make a left, and
And just come right up, and it's amazing that people who walk, because a lot of the hikers come off the train, walk in front of Depot, up Furnace, and Stone Street to hike.
Up Railroad?
Railroad, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, railroad. And it's amazing that nobody gets killed because
Well,
the
I mean, you could
cars
say that about
turning.
every intersection of the village, actually.
No, I know, but see, the people turning so fast,
Right,
Yes.
understood.
because, I do have a neighbor whose car was smashed by somebody turning fast.
It's pretty much a blind spot on both sides.
It is a
Yeah,
blind spot on
I
both
worry walking downhill to
Yeah.
go, yeah, I don't know where to position myself
And you're
strategically.
not on your phone while you're walking.
No,
either.
I try not to be.
So some kind of slow down or something, one of those things that shows children walking.
Well, it's clearly,
Yeah, that's
it's clearly
fine.
it's an enforcement issue on the weekends, and so that's something that needs to be communicated to our officers, that that's a hot spot, on busy
They're
traffic
around a
days.
lot, they
Yeah.
are around
Well, they
a
know
lot.
it's they know it's a problem.
Yeah, they're.
This is the problem of living in a village that was designed before cars.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, so now we're gonna move into budget discussion. Thank you for being patient, Michelle. while we-
thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Reggie.
Okay, so just a couple opening thoughts. It is crazy, and it's a hard thing to fix, because there's no one, it's not a single point fix.
I mean, I used to live at 4 Stone, so, I mean, the driveway there was wide enough, but then Steve next door, in order to get in his driveway, it practically stopped the whole street because it's very difficult to get in those narrow driveways if they have one.
If they have one at all, right? So we only have a little bit of public left, so for your benefit and the benefit of folks who will watch tomorrow, the budget process is ongoing. We have done an initial review of expenses and revenue, And we've had an initial conversation on personnel. We've built a tentative budget, which is what's on the website now, and that's what we're gonna be looking at tonight. Michelle's gonna walk the public through the assumptions that have been used to formulate that tentative budget. And so this is the beginning, not the end. We're gonna continue conversations all across the budget area. And the budget's gonna change based on the conversations that we have. There'll also be a public hearing the 13th of April. But I wanna tell you about the goals that I think we're trying to achieve in this budget. One is to keep village taxes as low as possible, to address deferred infrastructure and maintenance issues, prioritizing life safety, to be realistic about costs in the village. And so individual families experience price increases. We're all experiencing them now for things like, everything from milk to gas, and the village's expenses rise over time as well. And lastly, and I think this is really important to all of us, we want to value and invest in our staff to keep the village competitive and continue to draw quality employees. So with those goals in mind, we do our work, and tonight I think we need to talk through expenses within water and sewer. We need to talk about water and sewer rates. We need to get any other remaining issues that need to be addressed on the table so we can work on those issues. Figure out if we need any of our staff to come in for additional sessions or for next week's session. And we also need to schedule a follow-up personnel executive session. So with that, I'll turn it to you.
Okay. So we spent a lot of time last discussion on the general fund, so I want to start with water and sewer today, because we haven't really gone through them. So for the purposes of the tentative budget, the water fund and the sewer fund budgets are balanced, using fund balance to pay for some projects. We've talked in the past that, water and sewer rates have not changed in the same capacity. So sewer rates have increased over time, but water rates, the last change on both the flat rate and the usage rate was 2004. So with everything else that goes up, it makes sense to have a conversation about water rates to start. I did mention we have a balanced budget. We are using the fund balance, but that's not to say that there's not that much more that can be done or needs to be done in the water plant. The water plant is aging. We just started with chemical feed pumps today. As Joe mentioned, there's a laundry list of things that are Matt's immediate priorities, not to mention regular maintenance and wear and tear. So it's a conversation to have to raise rates to get more accomplished. Another big item that's in this budget that we've never had before is the second duly licensed operator. So right now, Matt is licensed to operate both plants, and we want someone to be his backup in full capacity if necessary, not having to, call somebody in. We'll have them on our staff.
When you say call somebody in, you don't mean another member of our staff, right? You mean someone who's like a consulting backup right now. That's the situation we have right now. Not a regular staff member, but comes in when we need them.
So that is, a big increase to both the water and sewer. I have it right now that the majority of the salary, about I think 75%, is in the water fund and 25% is in the sewer fund because of the licensing. And in all reality, that person would spend most of their time in the water plant. So that's in the budget. We've all talked about that, and so I have that in there. We talked about, doing either a usage rate or a flat rate. Usage, so if we did a 3% rate increase in usage on water, that's 9 cents for every 1,000 gallons. And then if you look at the history in the village for the past 12 months in 2021, so the calendar year 2021, all but 35 properties would see less than a $20 a year increase, so $5 a quarter. So if we increase sewer rates 9 cents, that gives an influx of $5,700 into the water fund, all but 35 properties, on average, $5 or less a quarter. and that goes with usage. So people that are, you know, very water conscious, they can benefit and not really see the change. It might shift focus to help save water instead of a flat rate where no matter how much you use, everybody would have an extra $2 a quarter or something of that sort. The $5,700, it's not a huge amount of money, but it would definitely help start with some more maintenance from that in the plant. And I think that given that water rates haven't changed, a 3% increase, you know, with everything else going up would make sense. And then we'd have to talk about the same thing on the sewer side. So on the sewer side, a 3% increase, or 3.1, is 3.5 cents for every 1,000 gallons. That gives us $1,850. Much less, but if we're talking, you know, 3% on both funds to keep it even, $1,800 in sewer, $5,700 in water.
So it's like 17.
So the last water consumption increase was 2004, right?
Yes, as well as the flat rate. They were both changed at that time.
And on the sewer side, the last was 2008?
2008 for usage, 2018 for flat rate.
I think that must be Phil's.
Okay.
So in 2008, we raised the sewer flat rates because of bonding. We did some sewer infrastructure, three big projects. So we bonded, and we needed to cover the cost of the bond for the next 20 years. So we talked about doing something on the usage side on both. And it's more a conversation about what the board feels comfortable with raising in conjunction with taxes.
When this pauses.
So basically we're looking at $7,550.
I don't want to combine water and sewer because they're very separate funds.
Mm-hmm.
They have separate needs too.
Does $1,800 really help the sewer?
Every little bit helps in the sewer fund. The sewer fund is very tight, and their fund balance is much less. So we talked about getting on maybe some kind of schedule where there's a maintenance of an increase, because like everything else, there's inflation. Electric goes up, oil goes up. They're up astronomically right now, and we're talking, you know, about a 3% rate that hasn't been done in a while.
And it's a resource. It's a public resource we all share, and I think it's important that we think about how we use water. All the expenses have gone up every year since 2004, and we're all still paying for the same rate for water, but we've all benefited from the cost to the village to maintain that public drinking water. So, you know, it's not it's always painful to make raises, but at some point we have to be, I think, realistic about expenses and the value of the resources we use.
And on the sewer side, you mentioned everything goes out.
Oh, dude, that's the third time. You're out here after that.
Yeah, I know.
So on the sewer side, increases have seen, we feel them much quicker. So even just on hauling sludge, nobody ever wants to talk about it, but the rates on that alone, the surcharges from the gas and the transport, and I guess maybe even the finding workers. But there's a surcharge now, a flat surcharge for every time we have to empty the sludge from the sewer plant. And that alone, it's $150 a truckload. So we're talking a couple $1,000 just from 1 year to the next that we've never had before. Plus you have the oil, you have the gas. Thankfully, a lot of our electric accounts are in the CCA, so that's stable right now. But there's just so much increasing that it makes sense to increase along with it.
But I think that we're all on the same page of like, you know, water and sewer should be a public good and we don't wanna make it exorbitant. I think that my question to you is, do these increases cover the increase of the cost for the water and sewage maintenance management? Because $5 a quarter is, I mean, it's not a huge amount, and I'm not saying we should raise it a whole lot, but I think we should responsibly look at what are the increases in the costs, and are we meeting those increases with what we're paying as a community?
So on the water side, it's, you know, it's roughly $5 or less, and the 5,700, it's a good start. On the sewer side, 3% is much less because the usage price is much less. So to get that up to about that $5 range, you know, we would have to do a 9% increase, but it would still only be, you know, 10.5 cents at that point, you know, 10, maybe 11, and then that'll give us, you know, 2%, closer to that 5,600 number, and that will help. That would effectively cover the cost of the surcharge just for hauling away, not counting anything else. So I don't think that we can increase to match all of our increases, but to help offset them so that we're not, you know, putting projects down the road as, you know, we have in the past.
I mean, that's the challenge here, is that we're playing catch up from such long deferred work, and rates having been left where they were, which just has created an unrealistic sense of product. Go ahead.
Do you have a sense of like what our percentage of increase is? I mean, I know we can't, you know, if our costs are up 20%, we can't raise the sewer 20%, but I mean, if we're paying 10% more, 3.1 is not sharing the cost.
I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I know individual places, but I didn't look at them as a whole.
Yeah, just in general, I mean, if there was a way to come up with, like, in general, what are our increased sewer costs percentage of, so we could, you know, say, our costs are up 20% and we feel we need to do X responsibly, as opposed to just, you know.
I can look into that. I would caveat that with, if we do that, that we take out some of the equipment and we look at reoccurring charges, you know, because you never know what kind of equipment. I would look at it in the sense of the sludges of it is monthly, the gas, you know, the contracts that we have that reoccur, that always go up 3 to 5% from year to year, insurance, things like that, we could do. I can look at it.
I mean, if you look at the spreadsheet that's on the website that we have in front of us, all you have to do is really go back to just the 2021 amended budget and the 21-22 adopted budget, which is really just 1 year, and then go one more category over, and you can just see some of the increases: source of supply, purification, sludge disposal, you know, all of that kind of stuff gives you kind of an indication. It would be an interesting number to go back to 2004 and see what. I mean, I can tell you what the CPI was since 2004. I don't know how that correlates to the water world, but the number has to be astronomical.
It has to be.
But then on the flip side, you know, you have to take the whole thing into context. I think there should be an increase in some capacity, definitely on the consumption side, not on the flat side. So someone who's a large water user, like myself, I should be penalized. And someone who is a real conservation person who doesn't use water for whatever reason, they shouldn't. So you reward behavior.
It is partially a culture shift to thinking. For so long we haven't thought about how we use water, and we don't have any choice anymore. We have to think about how we use it.
And the regulatory world of water has changed significantly in the last 10 years as to what is considered quality water versus 25 years ago.
The testing alone with the new, I'm not Matt, so I don't know the acronyms, something with the PCO. There's a new chemicals that they're testing for. Those tests.
Oh, the dry cleaning chemicals.
Are $2,000 a quarter that we've never paid for before.
Well, but it's also another way to frame this is thinking about, I can't imagine being given the option, if someone were given an option, do you want dirtier drinking water?
Or less of it.
Or, and for less, or do you want high quality drinking water for a little more? I mean, it's a pretty,
There's that, and then it's also what's dumped into the river, or, you
What
know, like,
isn't
what
dumped
isn't,
into, yeah.
right, like, so we are also, as a village, conserving and protecting our environment, and ultimately, we want to keep this as a public good. We don't wanna get down, 10 or 20 years later, where we've created a system where there's an expectation that water is almost free, and then the village has to sell the water plant to a commercial operation that sells us water at $20 a gallon. So I think that keeping in step, at least in a reasonable manner, that's, we don't wanna jump, because that will be shocking, but I like your idea of putting a schedule for raising the prices to keep with the cost of our water management.
There are people who are, as the commercial says, doing it every night. You run your dishwasher and it's 4 gallons of water to run your dishwasher. You stand there and wash your dishes, it's like the same thing every 2 minutes. So, if somebody's gonna run their dishwasher, they should be rewarded for not using so much water.
I'm gonna throw my husband under the bus right here.
Do not.
That's what he does, makes me crazy.
And we just have to, I think, be careful as a methodology that
Yeah.
we don't use our fund balance to offset ongoing operating
Yeah.
expenses.
Right,
Because
we
we're
won't
gonna
do that,
need
we don't do that.
Not
We
a good
haven't
idea.
even gotten to the dam yet.
Yeah.
But that number
Yeah.
is huge.
Huge.
And every penny of that is gonna be needed to, in some capacity for that.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, you have an aging infrastructure that just every year requires a little more than what you would like to do because it's aging.
Well, it also points to
It's
the
functional, but it's aging.
the longer term need for real capital planning, multi-year capital project planning. The village has never been there, and we have to be there with all of the needs we have.
So can we reevaluate a little bit and see where it seems like we're not pushing it too far, but can push it to be a little bit closer to what the price increases are? Or do you think this is the right place?
It's all relative, what's the right place to be. We've taken into account, it is a separate fund, water and sewer, 2 separate funds, and then the taxes. But I will say that if we're going to make a larger increase anywhere, it would be the sewer. We do have the dams, a lot of capital projects over there. There is a fund balance in the water fund, which we do need for those large capital projects. The dam is millions of dollars, we'll have to bond, things like that. But the sewer side, it's under $300,000 of fund balance, and that sounds like a lot, but we just spent how much money for 2 partial repairs of essential equipment in the sewer plant. If something really went wrong in the sewer plant, $290, it'll help us, but it'll probably wipe out a good chunk of it.
Yeah.
And as this budget is now, we're taking $49,000 out of the fund balance to achieve some of those capital project repairs because they have to be done. So the sewer rates more so than the water, I would think at this time. They both need to be increased, but sewer more so than water.
Even though that's where the bonds are?
The bonds
the concern was that the balance is lower there because of the bond payment, sorry.
Mhm. Yes, there's more debt in the sewer
There's more
fund
debt
right
in
now.
the sewer
The
fund.
water fund will have debt, if the dams are repaired on a bond, or if larger improvements are done in the water fund.
Mhm.
And the water fund right now has the ban in it and a payment, and that could be converted to a bond. But the here and the now is the sewer fund.
Okay.
The water fund is on its way to need, because of all these chemical increases in the testing. But the sewer has seen more expense increases, and doesn't have the fund balance that the water fund does.
I personally am comfortable with your 3% recommendation.
So 3% in the water fund gives us the 5,700. 3% in the sewer fund only gives us 1,800. But if we did 9 cents on both, the percentages don't match, but if we match the 9 cents and not 9 cents, then we'll get closer to, about 5,000 probably.
On sewer.
And then,
Why not just do a 10% on sewer? I mean,
That's where I was thinking, was like do a 9% or a 10% on sewer, because
sewer.
that's where the main.
The rates are,
So
$1.12
low.
per 1,000 gallons,
Yes.
so the 10% increase, well, sounds like a lot.
it's
It's
11.25 cents.
Yeah.
So could you maybe readjust the sheets to reflect something like that, just to see it in context? I think I would like to hear from Matt on the whole dual certified piece. He explained it to me once, and then he explained it to me a second time. The second time was better than the first time, because I think I understand a little more of the jargon. But if I understood it correctly, and he put it in a piece of paper, he said, a dual licensed operator would bring additional support to the staff on both sides of the water treatment industries as to what was today's drinking water does ultimately become tomorrow's wastewater that will then become somebody else's drinking water the next day, and so on and so on and so on. But I think hearing it from him in the public, with the challenges that that department faced over the last few years with regulation,
Yeah.
supplies, costs, I think would be helpful. Right now, the two plants are operated by two people.
Yes,
So Matt's 24/7 no matter what.
that's right.
He's at his kid's birthday party and the phone rings. You know what? Hold up the cake. I gotta take the phone call.
Yep.
And that's 7 days a week. And from my understanding, it is 7 days a week,
It is 7 days.
like
a week.
all the time. And I'd like to hear it from him, because I think it would be helpful for the public as well,
Okay, so we'll
to have him explain it.
put him on the meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah,
Have
I
him
think
come
so.
in. I think so too.
10-minute. That's just my opinion.
It's a good one.
So I can rerun these numbers to see the total influx. What would happen in the water and sewer funds with these increases? I would lower the contribution from fund balance. So a quick overview of water and sewer and how these budgets are built. They're based off of actual billings. So I take the number of water units billed, the number of sewer units billed, multiply it by the 4 quarters, we get the rate, the number, it is what it is. And the usage, I take an average. Usage hasn't really changed on average too much over the past couple years. We had an influx also, which helped the past 2 years of Butterfield. So when all the new Butterfield condos and businesses came online, that was an influx of extra flat rates into the water and sewer funds that we didn't have previously. So that probably prolonged, in my opinion, the need for a water and sewer rate increase as urgent because the funds were going up. But now there's no more new development, there's going to be no more new units, one here and there. It doesn't make a significant impact. So that's your flat rate, your usage, your penalty at 6% for people that don't pay, but it only can accumulate a max of 3 quarters because then it goes to the county.
Can you say that again?
The penalty is 6% a quarter, but it can only accumulate 3 quarters because by that 4th quarter, it's going to go on somebody's taxes.
3. I was thinking you were saying 3 quarters, like, I got it.
The Endpoint Technology Fee is just a service fee passed on to having the endpoints. And that's and then miscellaneous. So on the water side, there's final reads. Somebody sells their house, Matt has to go out and actually read the meter, get a final number, confirm it, recharge a small fee for that. So those are the components on both the water and sewer side. And then the expenses, I don't know if I want to go line by line through water and sewer because there's so much technical jargon in them, but broad categories which are similar to your general fund. You're going to have your personal services, which we just talked about. We used to have 3 people, so we're at 2. We're going to go back to 3, but that 3rd person is going to be an increased skill set, so an increased amount of money in wages. You have your benefits, health insurance, pension. You have debt in both the water and sewer. So in the sewer fund, you have some bonds and a band. A bond is long-term, it's a fixed amount of years. The ban, we renew it every year at a different interest rate. Interest rates have been low, so we haven't had to bond for some of those projects. In the water side, you only have a ban right now. We paid off all of our bonds. Yes.
They're one-year bans?
1-year bans. Every May they renew. So the ban principal, I pay off when we can, more than the minimum. The idea is to have a band payment that mimics a bond payment so that if we did convert, there's not so much of a change. And when we can, of course, always paying down principal is a better thing so that there's less interest in the future. On the water side, you have 3 components. Well, more than 3. So you have administration, which is office-related stuff. You have source of supply, so this is the raw water before it's treated. You have purification, which is the bulk of the expenses. It's the actual process of treating the water at the plant. And then transmission and distribution is the water lines in the road, getting it from the plant to the end user. And within each of these categories, you might have equipment repairs, but purification, like I mentioned, is the water plant itself, so that's where you'll see your bulk of expenses. The electricity, the chemicals, the equipment repairs, things of that nature. I see everybody looking at the water fund. Does anybody have specific line questions on what something encompasses or why there's a change?
I feel like we hit questions that I had when we did the initial conversation. Do we? Why are we? Can you talk me through why we're coming down on dam engineering?
So it was at 50,000 last year, but in the past it's only been around 2025. You know, with Chazen coming in, we thought that there might have been a lot more movement. Chazen had done that water study, alternative sources, didn't really go anywhere with it. It's all paid out of fund balance right now. The thought is to get the dam engineering and where we need to be to pay out of fund balance and then bond the actual project. We can increase it because it's a fund balance. I don't mind if we think that we would need more than 30.
So you're envisioning this line being used for an initial or an update of project scope?
Anything that would get us to a shovel-ready project. So it's broad scopes. Whatever kind of engineering we need, feasibility study, alternative work, anything that we need before to make the decision on if and when we're going to fix the dams and how we're going to do them to get us to that point.
The piece that we're not talking about because it's not super real yet is we do have ARPA money coming, right? We have 200,000 almost 200,000 that was direct to the village, and then if the legislature approves, we've got the county doubling that.
Is the ARPA, just so I'm clear, the ARPA was there before the share the growth concept?
Different,
right?
Completely different things. But the county executive drew, in her proposal, combined ARPA money with a drawdown from the tax surplus. So they're different topics, but she's pulling money from the sales tax surplus to be put together as a single allotment toward ARPA qualified projects. What's not clear, we still don't know for sure, is what portion of dam engineering could be, but we're going to have that that money can offset other costs.
Which brings up another point, in either the next meeting or two, we should probably have a broad conversation about ARPA spending.
Yep.
So to clarify a little bit too, the village itself has received ARPA money, and then there's the county willing to share the tax growth and the county willing to share the ARPA. So I just want to make sure that we ourselves have already received half of our village entitled ARPA allotment.
which is about 100,000,
Yes.
there's another 100,000 coming.
Yes.
And in theory, that will be matched with by the county with a combined monies from sales tax surplus and the 19.1 million that the county got.
So the first 100 that we already got came from the federal government through the county, or from the federal government directly
from
to us?
Directly.
The second half of ARPA is gonna go through the county.
No, the second half is still coming from the federal. So the village itself gets 200 directly from the federal government.
Okay.
What the county is willing to propose, so the county got their money.
This is
They're-
additional to that.
The county wants
Got
to
it.
share some of their ARPA allotment.
So we got 200,000 directly delivered in two pieces, two roughly $100,000
We'll get
chunks.
the
We
second one.
have not got the second one yet, we've got the first.
When's the second one coming, roughly?
Summertime?
Yeah,
August, I think it came last year.
Okay, that's fine. All right, and then
That's
the other
direct to
ARPA
us, and the other
is separate.
piece is
Okay,
the
I got it.
county sharing out a small bit of the 19.1 million it got.
Got it.
And then as we've spoke in the past about that too, the water filters need to be redone. One is roughly 85,000, so we'll have to really engineer it, RFP it, get to, for all, at least two of them, if not all three of them, and, you know, that's a good chunk of money right there.
The intention of the previous iteration of the board was to use that ARPA money for those filters. It wasn't a broad public conversation, because there wasn't, you know, money would get nibbled up, but with the prospect of doubling it, it's obviously a bigger conversation.
And the requirements from
Yes.
the federal government on how the money gets spent.
Yeah.
Has
It
significantly
changed.
changed.
And continues to change, so it's.
So in the past, the village, based on all the rules, would have really only been able to spend that kind of money on a water or sewer infrastructure project, mostly water. Now that it's evolving, the village, because we've received less than $10 million, has much broad strokes. So the way that NICOM phrased it, if it's a regular village expense, outside of pensions and a couple of things like that and salaries, you can use it. You could, but we had already talked about using it for water, but that's a conversation that we can have. The county's portion of that ARPA is yet to be determined what kind of limitations will be on it, because it's a pass-through. I'm assuming because the county received more than 10 million that portion might be restricted to us for water. But that's a big assumption. We don't know that yet.
Right. And we don't even know that it's approved
Correct.
yet.
Any other questions on the water fund?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. On the sewer fund, broad categories, same thing, administration, office-related items. You have your sanitary sewer, which is getting the sewage to the treatment plant. These are like your pump stations and your sewer lines. And then you have treatment and disposal. Think processing the actual sewage, which would be the plant. So the bulk of the expenses and line items here in the sewer fund are under treatment and disposal because it's the plants. And then you
Why
have the
did
debt.
equipment and repair go down so much?
In the sewer fund?
Yeah. 8120, 415, equipment and repair. You got new stuff that won't need repair so much?
So this is the pump stations, and actually, that's an accurate statement. The pump stations have all been redone over the past couple of years.
Which line are you looking at, Kathleen?
Sanitary sewer equipment repair, 8120, 415.
Oh, alright, yeah.
Sort of like vehicles. I noticed
Exactly.
in signing the bills, there's not all these, belts and various things that we were sort of gluing the equipment back together with.
The garbage truck, yeah.
It's nice to see, just the electric, the regular stuff.
The focus
you,
on the
Michelle.
sewer, you're welcome, for the equipment repairs are inside the plant or outside the plant.
Did that save us $1,000 in electricity then?
Hoping so, the CCA. So electric has gone up in the sewer plant usage, because of the aeration and the blowers and things like that. But it should be a little
More
more
efficient?
flat.
Yeah, and there are gains in other
Mhm.
areas by using the aeration and blowers, that we're able to extract more water from the waste than we could before. So we're not paying to dispose of as much water that can be
Yeah.
You know, I'm still projecting an increase, because we don't know what's gonna happen, and it, you know, it was 22,000 last year. I always think that there's always gonna be an increase in energy, usage, because, you know, as things age, they might not be as efficient, so there might be some savings there to go from, but I think 21,000 this year is a little too low, and that's why I upped it to 25 next year.
And the sludge management line that went up 8,000, that's just
So that's what we were talking about, the,
cost of sludge
Cost of
management?
hauling.
it's $150 per truckload surcharge, which averages about 6,000 over the course of the year. So they haven't upped their per gallon rate yet, but increased their surcharges, or added surcharges, they never were there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for the bands on both sides, since they do renew and they are market rates, last time I spoke with Munistat, the financial company advisor that helps do the ban and bond facilitation, rates were a little over 1%. I'm projecting 1.75 as an estimate for the budget, because I don't know what's gonna happen from 2 weeks ago until May. And some years we've been surprised both ways. Most years we've been really surprised with a lower rate. But I don't know with certainty
inflation.
at all with inflation who's actually gonna bid on us. Some years we have 3 people bidding on our ban. Last year I think we had 7 people. So you really don't know what the market's gonna bring. So, you know, 1% to 1.75%, it's a couple of thousand, but I think it's definitely needed, because if that ends up being high, you know, and we already have a slim budget, I don't know where we would find that. So what I do then is, if interest rate does come down lower, I usually use the budget amount, if it's not needed somewhere else, to pay down more of the principal. So it's still going to the same similar line items.
Is there any reason, if this is even doable and legal, when you renew it every year, rather than do a 1-year renewal, do a 2-year renewal? The general consensus, I think, out there is the interest rates are probably gonna be up a little higher next year.
To
Can you do
qualify
that?
for the short-term financing, it has to be 12 months or less.
Okay, so that's why you're getting, okay, got it.
There's a whole other set of rules if you start borrowing over 12 months, I think up to 5 or 7 years, and then you get into the bonds, which are long-term, like really long-term. There's different thresholds for different rules.
Got it.
Okay. Any other water and sewer questions right now? So for follow-up for next meeting, we'll have Matt come in and explain a couple things, especially the dual certified, and I'll have revised usage rate increases, and I'll share my worksheets with everybody on how that looks.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, for the usage, I think I said it before, I base it off of, because you can't predict usage, the calendar year of 2021, and that's how I get our estimated revenue amounts. So assuming everybody used the same amount of water that they used from January to December of 2021, that's what's gonna give us the estimated influx of revenue for the budget.
There have been a couple questions about seeing the fund balance spending laid out. Do you know when we'll have that kind of thing?
Yeah, I can send it out
To
to
finish out
everyone.
this year.
Yeah.
I can send it out to everyone tomorrow. I have it. It's going to be part of the budget. You know, a 2-year history of fund balance, what's appropriated in the budget, if I anticipate any savings, and then an estimated fund balance number across all 3 funds. I have it prepared, so I can email it out tomorrow of where we stand today.
And we've been working on getting estimates for projects so that we know what things are gonna be cost, and I have a better sense of what can actually be paid for
Right.
now than later. So it'll be a better look tomorrow than it would have been a couple days ago. We're trying really hard to get numbers as tight as you can.
Right. No, I appreciate that.
You know, just quickly if we want to go over it. So projecting based on where our audited fund balance was in each of the three funds, what we've appropriated for the current budget, and what we're appropriating to propose for the next year budget. The sewer fund will be about 173,000. The water fund will be about 432. And the general fund, well, if we don't spend the 80,000, so assuming today we don't spend any of that 80,000 that we're talking about spending, it would be 1,017,000. And then back out 80, whatever fair number of that 80,000 is that we think we can really spend by May 31st.
Okay.
You know, so 975 maybe, roughly. So I don't think we're not going to be able to spend all of that 80, but
Right.
we're working towards accomplishing some of the things that we can in the next, what is it, 8 to 10 weeks?
And then I think there was a request that Joe had sent in to add to the general expense budget, general fund, to break out the police equipment, like cameras, body cams, those kinds of things, and how those were gonna be added in. Can we add that into the lists?
For next year or for this year?
Both, I guess, because we're considering putting some of those costs on our this year's fund balance and next year's budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I think wasn't it outstanding that maybe it's this year out of the 75, or maybe it's next year, or maybe it's just not at all? I think, isn't that how
Right,
you
but
left it?
that's, I would like to have, I'd like to have some more conversation, because I think that some of the issues that have been raised in various conversations, we need to take a second look, at where we're spending for particular items and what we need to do now versus later. I would like very much for us to have a policy in place for body cameras before we actually do the expense, so that to me seems like a logical thing to move forward and have the work done, have the policy work done in place first. And that frees up capacity to to do other things that we haven't had capacity to do, like the dock potentially. And we do have, we have follow-up conversations about security at the highway department, right? Getting the, and here, and at water and sewer, we've talked about fobs on the doors potentially coming out this year, then that, that takes that chunk. There's been a request to look at a gate across the driveway at the highway department, to keep vehicles from going back there, because it's not safe for people to be back there, with all the equipment, et cetera. So I think to your point, we need to look at it in 2-year chunks, but also look at what we want to prioritize.
Right, and I may have missed this, but I haven't seen anything about repairs for, like, if we're talking about putting cameras in, but what about the repairs to the lights? Have we?
I'm working on a number with that now. James Hartford was the architect who designed that project, and the company that made the lights that are down there now does not exist. There's a successor company, so we're trying to figure out replacement costs for those. But I also want to look at a light that is less susceptible to damage, because they are roughly T-ball size. T-ball, what do you call it? The thing you knock the T-ball off with? The T. They're roughly T size.
It's just a high golf ball.
And
Is that what happened to them?
At this point,
Did somebody just go across and knock them all out at once?
it didn't happen all at once.
No, I don't think they're that easy to damage either. I mean, those are industrial grade, like they're used on the waterfronts at Baltimore Harbor. So these are not just junky lights that are there that are easy to whack with a baseball bat.
Right.
Somebody probably went at them with a crowbar and some cutting tools to take them apart. So
Oh, okay.
It was real. No, those lights were put in, I think, in 2012. So technology has obviously shifted, and there may be downcast lighting in different configuration that would work better. Point is, I'm trying to work on numbers. I also want to reach out to Andy Schmar, was the executive director at the Land Trust when that project went through with Scenic Hudson, and I believe it was the Land Trust that donated the lights, and either the Land Trust or a foundation the Land Trust was working with. So I'd like to open that conversation to say, is that something you'd be willing to look at again with us.
Okay, I mean, it'd be nice if we had a plan going forward, or a budget even,
Yeah.
for repairing things that get damaged.
We have to have lights down there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, there's no question, it's crazy that it's dark.
Right.
So we talk about, doing this village-wide municipal building, municipal repairs, and, we started that 2 years ago using fund balance to use chunks of money, to get big projects done, like the Main Street wall, for example. So in the budget, there's roughly 330,000 allocated from fund balance. About 30,000 of that, is earmarked for some projects that I've moved out of the operating budget to help
Okay.
balance it, and offset the tax levy. That other 300,000 roughly, is open for discussion, and, we have all these projects going, and we understand that these projects aren't going to be identified, RFP'd, costed out, prioritized all, by May 1st.
Right.
But we've had conversations about things that we would like to accomplish. So, like the Main Street wall was a big one, in the firehouse boiler. We did those two, and then you see what's left over, because, 300,000, we're not engineers, we're not estimators, we don't know what these big projects are gonna cost. So that would be something that the board can work towards, a list, prioritize, pick 2 or 3 projects to start with, get them done, get them costed out. Okay, now this is where we're left over for this year. And then we can move forward, what we can do in the winter, what we can move to the spring, things like that. So a lot of these bigger items would come out of that.
So when I think about the stuff that I hope we can accomplish, and this is just my opinion, and we can have continued conversation, the things that I think about prioritizing and trying to get knocked out in this budget year are the door upgrades in the buildings and the fobs.
To clarify, are we replacing actual doors too?
We are at
Okay.
water and wastewater,
Okay.
and I'm waiting for the estimates to come back on that, but there are doors that do not properly close, let alone lock. The enclosure of the generator building, the
Which would have to-
modifications.
Sorry to interrupt, we just have to make sure that, general fund balance versus water and sewer projects. Yes.
Sorry. But the doors, alright, so doors in this building, a door at the firehouse where the to get to the basement,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's got proper ventilation where the boiler is.
Yeah, it's 2 doors.
These
building.
2 doors at Village Hall, there are a series of modifications that need to happen in the clerk's office to both make it more functional and restrict access, to make that space a little safer, flipping the counter around, building a properly sized mailbox, just small functional things that will make that space work better, so that we can potentially create more workable space in the space. We're not gonna get lights done, we're not gonna have the information we need fast enough, but I wanna,
Yeah, I just wonder, I mean, like, how do we plan, like, there's gonna be minor mischief and vandalism that happens. It's consistently happened in the village. So can we plan a budget to repair stuff so they don't go 2 years without being repaired? Obviously, there's a lot of research that goes into getting stuff repaired, but like, can we allocate funds for that?
well, isn't that what the municipal buildings fund is intended to do?
Right, so
Yeah.
right now, it's at a fund balance, and then, if we start seeing a pattern, so unfortunately, like bathrooms are constantly replacing, a paper towel holder or a faucet, like those are built into the operating budgets because we have a pattern. There's just small bathroom repairs that happen all the time. So we can build it into the operating budget moving forward, but until we know exactly if there's a pattern or not, it qualifies as a one-time repair out of the fund balance.
Like painting the tunnel under the subway, that needs to be done regularly anyway.
Right.
We could do seasonal colors.
Well, I mean,
And then smaller projects, something I envision like that, like painting, or a lot of that stuff is worked into the budget. If it's the highway department, their labor's already in there. There's miscellaneous supplies for anything that the highway department needs. It changes every year. Paint, or, Bugsy's constantly redoing, wooden slats in the benches and repainting them brown. Like, that stuff is built in. So it's more putting a project list together to see if we really need to add funds on some of the more everyday maintenance kind of things.
Well, and I think too, we've created possibility for that. COVID threw everything off. That's not an excuse forever, but there were materials that we couldn't get for a period. But now also that team, we keep saying highway, but I really want to start talking about them as roadways and facilities, because that's what they do. They have more time available now to address stuff, so I'm hoping we can get caught up on the backlog.
So then moving forward, for tonight, I think the last big topic that we want to touch on would be the tax levy and the general fund.
10 of 9.
So in
Well,
our,
you ought to.
Huh?
You ought to. You had that phone going off all night.
So I came early.
It's fine. This is the best part, Phil.
I know, I'm beat.
so with our
City
prelim,
my brother's apartment.
before we got to our tentative budget, I was working off of a full tax levy, exercising the max. The tentative budget, as it's posted and as it stands, is using 2/3 of the max tax levy.
Be back next week.
For the folks at
Yeah.
home, the max tax levy is?
It's
One-
a tax cap, correct?
No,
Yes.
but I mean, what's the number?
111,000.
And that's is it 8%?
No, 6.3%.
6.3.
But that's not the increase to the tax bills. It's an increase from year over year on the tax levy, an increase to the property owner or the tax bills if assuming their assessment doesn't change, is roughly 4.84%. That was the very, very original. So the budget that stands now is 2/3. So I took out 36,000 off that 111.
So that was the $99 that was discussed previously, that 484 was the $99?
So can we get into the habit of calling the first budget draft version 1, which was budgeting at the full tax cap. Version 2, which is the one you're about to talk
The
about,
tentative,
is budgeted at 2/3 of the tax cap.
yes.
And then as we proceed, version 3, because I know there has been a little confusion that I got a call this morning and said, you're adopting the budget. I said, whoa, no.
Yeah.
The budget that is shown is at maximum cap, which is what we're legally allowed to do. That doesn't mean that's what we are going to do.
What's shown on the website right now is the 2/3 version.
Correct.
Right.
But if we could label it that, 2/3 of maximum tax cap.
So that's like 66%.
So somebody can understand it and follow as we sequence
Right,
through.
as opposed to just a date at the bottom, they would see which
Right.
version, more clearly what version they're looking at. So you could do a header or something.
And then we just obviously have to come to some kind of consensus at the end of everything. I personally have no interest in budgeting to the maximum tax
No,
cap.
neither do I.
Which
But-
is why I've gotten it down to 2/3. So I'm assuming that once now it's at 2/3, it's not gonna go up. If we want to, we work down.
Yeah.
So that 2/3, so it's a 4.24% increase on the tax levy, which is a 2.79 increase on the tax bills.
And comes to about $74.
So for a Forge Gate condo, it's $26. For 180,000 assessed value parcel, it's $57.
And the spending increase for the 2/3 version 2, roughly? Like budget to budget spending? So last year's budget was
Right.
adopted, budget to budget, the spending was 6.4.
So it goes up, I think, 7 and change, maybe 7.7%. But there's also an influx of CHIPS money and other revenues, but spending to spending, it's 7.7%.
That's what it was last year. No, this
Last year to the tentative right now.
Okay, so it's
Draft 2
2/3.
to version 2.
So in this 2/3 version of the tentative budget, we need, if the board wants to figure out what they're comfortable with raising the tax cap, how much, and then executive session might help, and we'd have to go through line by line and see if there's things that we can decrease. I've gone through the budget twice. The first time I took out whatever I could to get us from the full to the 2/3.
Mm-hmm.
Went through it one more time today and yesterday, and I got 7,600. It's from police salaries. I double counted the holidays. That was
okay.
I assume that everybody works the shifts, and then instead of doing the incremental change for the holidays, I double counted it.
Okay.
And because a lot of the holidays are double time, I adjusted a couple of the courts too per Larry. In all reality, some officers don't come to court, so it's not likely that all officers are going to come every month. So we staggered it. So
you need to appear.
Yes. You're not going to have all of them at once. So we put in a staggering schedule, assuming they come, a couple times a year, each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And these 2 changes, I could take out 7,600, and that to lower the tax levy even more.
That seems reasonable. Thinking about how you see officers actually showing.
Yeah, and I think, there's certain requests that the police department have requested, like added foot patrols on busy weekends. I wonder if we can't just get the guys who would be in the car to come out of their car and be on foot.
They do.
Right, but like to add another officer, unless there's like mischief happening on the street, do we have, I would love to hear from Officer Burke if there's actual reasoning that like we have problems, or are we anticipating problems? Because I just don't understand why we're increasing street patrols, whether they're on, I love seeing our officers on the foot, on foot and out of their cars. But if you have one in the car, like, do we really need one on foot too? Like, which is more important?
Having the one in the car, because the one in the car is the one who's going to respond to if a call comes in and they have to respond. It's the person in the car that's responding, not the person on foot.
Well, I would imagine traffic would be important on, like, because he's asking for increased patrols during busy weekends.
Mm-hmm.
It's also crowds.
Yeah.
And C Streak, it's part of their contract when
They
it's
pay for
negotiated
that,
yeah.
He's, I spoke to him briefly this morning. It's a wish, but it's to help on the busy weekends. Some of the summer weekends, hikers, traffic, a whole host of things that he could explain better. But if, at a bare minimum, if we negotiate with C Street that they're paying for those in the fall, that wouldn't be, if we take the expense out, we lose the revenue from C Street too. So there, it's a wash, and it makes sense. It benefits us. As for the other days that Larry's requesting, and high visiting season, he could speak to.
Right, because does larger crowds mean like crime or
Shoplifting.
problems?
Shoplifting.
But is a foot patrol going to change that?
Maybe.
Probably not.
Let's hear from Larry. It'd be interesting to see
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
what piece is traffic, what piece is parking, what piece is just general crowd. I have no idea.
A U-turn in the middle of Main
Let's
Street.
let's have
Right,
a
but the
comment.
guy
I think that would be
on
helpful.
foot isn't going to stop a U-turn. So
Well, actually, there have been a number of times where
They do it right here.
they do stop it. People from U-turning the crosswalk, they'll go out and physically stop them. Motion from the sidewalk.
And you'd have to think about the person in the patrol car answering the radio, if they're on a post or doing something, that they might be in the middle of directing traffic because that's where they're needed at that time. If they get that call, they're leaving. So if we really needed that traffic control, for example, we can't have it, and they'd have to leave. They have to answer the 911 calls.
Well, we want to hear from Matt on
would like to
details.
hear
So
Larry
we want Larry to come in too. I think we've covered. Do we feel like we need? Go ahead.
Just on the Larry piece, one more.
Yeah.
The parking enforcement component,
Yes.
where the police factors in versus the parking enforcement person. I forgot his title?
A tenant?
The parking enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Right, so is he actually taking care of the Fair Street
Yes.
lots versus the police? Just for clarification.
I
'cause there
spoke
was
to
some-
Larry today.
Okay. So
Even when Nico was here, he had an app on his phone, he did the municipal lot, and the thought is that the new parking enforcement would do the municipal lot and the addition of
got it, so
Mayor's
that's
Park.
the Nico old role
And
is handling all of that, it's not the police officer.
Right.
Okay. There was something about a
He would,
handheld
he would
thing.
like to,
Two
one
parking
of Larry's
enforcement.
wish list is not that there would be 2 parking enforcement officers on at a time, but that we have 2 people so that they can alternate
And
shifts.
that's doable.
Or be longer.
So, and when I budget for those types of things, I budget by the shift, not by the number of people. 3
Right,
officers,
right.
300 officers, there's a finite number of shifts.
Yeah.
Same thing for parking. If we're not overlapping them, it's budgeted that somebody, in whatever capacity, works 7 hours. Usually it's been 6, but with the idea of that Main Street parking, whenever it goes through, that it's a 7-hour day instead of a 6-hour day, I increased it up an hour. So if anybody else has ideas on where items, as they go through, where we can help lower the amount that we need to raise for taxes, I'm all ears. Like I said, I've been through the budget twice, and it comes down to, a few projects that we may or may not be able to do, but a lot of it is salary, benefits, and fixed costs that are reoccurring.
So let's talk about when we can schedule a session to continue the personnel discussion.
Did you hear back from the insurance company yet?
No, I've asked him twice, and he keeps saying in a couple more days. I think that I asked him on Friday, and he said hopefully by Tuesday.
Remind me what the
But-
insurance question was?
So right now I have high estimates in for general liability and workers'
right,
comp, and
yeah.
the thought is that maybe those will come down, but they might not.
Okay.
So we need to hear from Kieran.
I'm anticipating workers' comp won't be as high as we budgeted for.
And the only reason I went high is because we were on a 2-year fixed schedule, so I didn't want to see surprises, but that would be great if it does come down.
We've had no claims.
Yeah, our
so-
experience rating should be pretty good, right?
Okay.
And it's a big number of insurance.
Is it helpful for you to schedule the daytime sessions seem to work well for you with?
Sure.
Do you want to try to do Tuesday? The 29th?
Okay.
Well, I don't know if others are available.
So Tuesday instead of Wednesday? Is that what you're saying,
Well,
or
I think
Tuesday and
we-
Wednesday?
Wednesday, we need to have an executive session for personnel. So
Right.
that's the discussion I'm thinking about, is scheduling that.
Okay.
On the 30th, we have a closed session for advice from council before the meeting, the budget meeting. So it'd be, if you wanna do an executive session, I think we would need to, if you wanna do it Wednesday, we'd need to move it back further.
Okay, so what you're saying is
I'm
Tuesday.
saying proposing Tuesday as an additional session to deal with
Okay,
personnel stuff.
executive.
That's fine with me.
Correct.
Okay, so Tuesday, exec, and you'll tell me his time?
Well, we don't, because it's an executive session, we don't need Michelle in the session, but we may need you to answer questions. So you're here at 9:30, so
Yes.
do we do 9:30 to 11, and that gets Eliza out to open shop?
That'd be fine.
Okay,
Works for me.
Okay, so Tuesday the 30th,
29th,
3/29,
Tuesday the 29th.
9:30, exec people.
Yep.
Wednesday, 6 o'clock legal, Wednesday, 7
7.
o'clock public budget.
Budget, yeah.
Live? These are all live? Or we're not yet?
Tuesday is live. I would like to be able to have the budget discussion in person. I just think it's useful to sit around a table. Do folks have thoughts? The downside is lesser live participation.
Because everybody is coming to Zoom for our budget meetings.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, knocking down the Zoom door
Right.
I mean, the people I've spoken to watch it
the
on
next
tape,
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're at their discretion,
I would rather be here at the table. I think it's easier to see each other's faces.
but
That's fine.
it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay. And it's, being down here is better than being up there for discussion. Okay. Just a point of a calendar note. I have a family health issue to deal with the week of the 4th. I am anticipating, do you have a kid here?
No.
It's my pet goat.
It did sound like your pet goat.
There's a goat?
Sounded like a strange ringtone.
Bill will go.
I thought it was someone's phone.
That's what I thought, but down there.
That sounded like a kid.
All right, at any rate, I'm anticipating being able to be on the call on Wednesday, but there's a to be at the meeting on the Wednesday the 6th, but there's a possibility that I won't be. So,
Okay.
and the session will still go on. We have to get the budget done, but I may or may not be there. And Jeff, you head out on the 8th, right?
I am gone starting the 8th and I'm back on the 19th.
And so we will have posted before you leave
Correct.
everything we need to post for the budget. Will Karen, if we do if it's a live session, Karen will take this spot here? Or do we need to do Zoom for Karen?
Do Zoom, she has, do
The
Zoom
thir-
please.
The 13th is a public hearing. We could do public hearing on Zoom?
Yep.
Okay.
So the 13th is the public hearing.
Yep.
And the 6th is what? When we're hoping to adopt something?
No.
No, it's final discussion.
Final
To
discussion.
approve documents to post.
My goal in a perfect world
Yeah.
is that next week, between the two meetings, by the time we leave on Wednesday, that I know what changes we're all willing to make, and then on the 6th is like a last final review, and then the public hearing, we could talk about if we want to add any additional components to the budget. The schedules are what they are from the state, we have to have them, but the budget memo comes from the budget officer or whatever in there, we could talk about that on the 6th, but I hope that by the end of next week, the numbers are at least 95% done.
Okay.
And the public hearing will be on the 13th, and then on the 27th will be the resolutions to adopt the budget.
So pending public input on the 13th would determine if we need another meeting.
Yep, got it.
And that's why there's that week gap between the public hearing and adoption.
Okay. Got it.
Right. Anything else we need to cover?
There's more things on the
Yeah, there's
agenda.
Motion to
Oh, yes, approved bills.
Motion to approve batch number 6403 in the amount of $48,859.44.
49,000, I think. It's on the.
Did it change?
Yeah,
That was
There
the
was-
second number?
There was a
Ah.
revision.
49.
I didn't see, sorry. I thought it was, I finally had the numbers. What is it, 49?
$859.44.
Oh, it's one, just a little thousand.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And minutes of the 2:23 meeting, this was the garbage meeting. Oh my God, we made it through the night, we didn't talk about garbage. I didn't have any modifications, did yours, are your edits reflected? Joe made a couple.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so I'm abstaining. But the only edit I had.
The 23rd? You were there on the 23rd?
No, I was away.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes, Joe had a corrected date.
How
Is
did you
that, wait a
correct
minute,
it?
we may not be able to do this.
Did you watch it on
Is that when
Zoom?
you were- Is that when you were away
Actually, I
too?
did.
The
3rd of
23rd?
February?
I was here.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
was there. I was the only one.
Yeah.
Joe
The
and
only
Tweeps were away.
Okay, Sweeps was
Yeah,
out.
Tweeps.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 2/23/22.
Second?
Alright.
Oh, you're not there.
Can't vote.
I'm seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
And one,
Abstain.
Abstention.
not, abstention.
When does
Public
Tweeps come
comment?
back?
Okay, say that again.
When does Tweeps come back?
I think the end of this week.
I'm
We've
not
been
gonna-
waiting so patiently all night, we've hit public comment. Do you wanna make public comment, Mr. Pugh?
Yeah, my first one is I think you should do public comments at the beginning, since several people were here that wanted to make comments and they've left for various reasons. My other observation is that generally when you watch the news or anything else, the stuff they do last, they call it taking out the trash. It's the stuff they care least about. So I think it's an unfortunate comment that you put public comment last, and you basically sit here until everybody's left. On the other hand, I am 100% of the public that's here. Yeah, I guess, so anyway, I was thinking, as I was listening, I applaud you for at least starting to think long-term. I mean, I feel like this village has often sort of patched last week's pothole with next week's money kind of a thing. It's just constant. And the idea that you're sort of starting to put things together, at least to think that way. I'd love to hear sort of what the long-term vision for the village is, because I think it's very, you know, who was it, Robert Frost said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And so I kind of look at the things we're working on, and I said, that appeals, and I feel this back and forth. I'm just wondering if we had a long-term sort of vision and strategy, of, you know, sort of, it says, this is where we're trying to get the village. I don't know where it is. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that say, oh, I'd like it to be the way it used to be. It's a really hard thing to do. And actually, if you really looked at the way the village was 150 years ago, you know, filled with coal soot, no trees because they're all burned down, most people really don't mean it. Anyway, so I applaud that. The you mentioned in the budget, you said the goal, you listed a whole bunch of goals.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear the word quality of life or the feel of the community in the budget? In the goals for the budget, does it include the phrase quality of life or
Well,
the feel of the community?
So the place that I think quality of life stuff is reflected most in the budget work that we're doing is catching up on the things that make a difference in people's everyday lives, like sidewalks and roadways.
I just, when you listed those things, I thought, I do care about the employees, et cetera, but it'd be nice to hear that the taxpayers is sort of the number one, you know, the quality of life for the taxpayers is the number one thing, because they're the people that fund everything.
Absolutely.
I like the idea of shared services. I'll give you a couple random thoughts. Did you know that, according to, I spent a lot of time talking to Larry a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. Did you know that the parking enforcement officers are 45 times more cost effective at writing tickets than the police? 45 times more effective. They write 15 times more tickets per hour worked, and we pay them less than a third. If you do the math, they're 45 times more effective, roughly speaking. It's a big stretch. If you compare our budget to New York City, we are spending 17.5% on police. New York City spends 5%. We spend 3 times more as a percent of the budget on police than New York City. We have 2 times more officers per capita than New York City. We have 2 times more vehicles per capita than New York City. There was a major crime on my property a couple of years ago. Cold Spring Police were the very first to respond. They immediately dished it off to Putnam County Sheriff. I talked to Larry. They don't handle major crimes. They don't have the resources, the skills, the capabilities.
No, so it's, excuse me, I just wanted, for the record, we don't have an investigative unit.
Right.
Investigations get handed over to the sheriff's department. It's not a skill set question, it's who is responsible for what. Go ahead.
But anyway, what else on there? The last one, you mentioned body cameras. I do hope if you do them, that you have like a set of rules that really make them work. Because where they work well, they work really well. Where they don't, they're awful. So things that I would suggest, A, they can never be turned off. There has to be extreme disciplinary action if a body camera goes off, because that's when bad things happen. The other is the tapes that are recorded should not be in the possession of the police. They should be in the possession of an independent council of citizens who review them. Otherwise, you just have the police guarding the police. That makes no sense. Lastly, I would tell you, security cameras and video cameras, they don't deter vandalism. Fixing things deters vandalism. The New York City subway system was the most analyzed thing, the graffiti. What they figured out solved the problem was clean the cars. If you take away the graffiti artist's gratification of seeing their tag go by, they stop doing it. If someone had jumped on the lights the first time someone, I guess, took a baseball bat, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I never even looked at them. I disagree with you. I think you could be just fine with no lights there. I prefer no lights in the environment. I think it's nicer, it's more natural. But if you fix it right away.
You raise a good point that when people care, when it's apparent that people care about a place, it gets taken care of better.
Right.
That's a really good point.
So, I think that my guess is that tunnel has been graffitied every year since it first went up. And my guess is that a couple of gallons of paint and a couple of guys with a paintbrush are a lot less expensive than putting a camera in there. And if you put a camera in there, it almost increases the challenge to do it and not get caught. So I'd rather see you spend the money from cameras on paint and repairs. No, just a bunch of random thoughts.
Thanks.
Yeah, good.
Much
But
appreciated.
I would challenge every department to save 5% a year. Figure out how to share services and save 5% a year.
Thanks.
That's a good suggestion, and I think that
I'm
there have
sorry.
been costs that have not been spent, like deferred costs with water waste treatment and things like that, where we couldn't ask them to save anymore because they've been saving for so long, but there are other departments where the budget has been growing, and I think that's where that kind of suggestion would be useful.
There's an awful lot of shared services that can go on around here. Share with Phillips, we share with Phillipstown, we can share with Nelsonville. Trucks can drive all the way to Putt Valley and back. I mean, there's a lot of shared services. Vehicles are a fixed cost. They should be on the road and used all the time, right? Otherwise, it's kind of a misuse of whatever. Hey, how many miles are on a police car when we turn it in?
Do you know the answer to that?
I do not, but it's not about the miles on a police car, it's about the
The
hours
hours
on
on
the
the
engine.
engine.
Well, if they turn them off when they park out front, there'd be a lot less hours.
Have they been turning them off lately?
They've been turning them off lately, yeah.
The issue with turning them off is, as I understand, is the computer reboot. Is that right?
We're gonna
They're
have to
not-
ask Larry.
Yeah, that's a Larry
That's what
question.
I've heard.
So next week, when we have our next session, the officer in charge will be here and he can address some of your questions directly.
Can you do public comments at the beginning?
So we could absolutely talk about having public comments at the beginning. I think it's traditionally been at the end so that people could respond to the conversation that happened. And, I do try to, when people come, make an effort to find out what folks are here for and where they'd like to speak. We weren't actually covering police stuff tonight, but had I known that that's what you were talking about, we could have talked about it earlier potentially.
See,
We do our best to accommodate who comes.
I appreciate that. My thought is, I'm here because of what I saw from last week's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, my guess is people don't come to comment on what you say, they come to comment on what you said.
It depends on the night.
Okay.
Depends
The
on
crowd that was here tonight, I mean, for the most part, were here because of a specific agenda item, so they were
Right.
here to comment on what was happening tonight. There are people that will come to bring up something, especially if it's a continued conversation, but
It varies.
One thing we did do at the school, we made an adjustment in the later years I was there, is we had 2 public comment periods.
Mm-hmm.
We had 1 public comment period, which was for the agenda, and the second public comment period was for anything. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
anything was in the beginning and the agenda items was at the back end.
And how did
That's a
you-
great idea.
Which kind of
That's a
fits
great
that
idea.
kind
Yeah.
of, but it was
Yeah.
2 different, because our meetings at the school were really, unfortunately, longer than they should have been.
Uh-huh.
And it was and it was also an accommodation to the staff, because a lot of the people that came wanted to ask the high school principal a question, or ask the
Right.
finance person. And as a courtesy to them, because they've been working all day, we wanted to get them out of there, so they left at a certain point. But the anything you want to ask was always in the beginning, which kind of was, I'm asking about last week's conversation.
Uh-huh.
And then the agenda items was more on the back end.
I'm open to doing that.
And it worked well. Now, in the village setting, I have no idea, this is new territory for me, but it seems like that would work
I think that's a
and be
great
an accommodation
suggestion.
for
Great
everybody.
idea.
I'm open to it.
Makes sense?
We would have to just make sure that we focus time so that we don't spend all of the agenda on
Right,
conversations
Right.
on any topic.
correct. And there were limitations, you had a certain amount of minutes, I forgot what
Right.
the.
I think that's a great idea. See, you made a change in one night.
Do we have to vote on that?
No, but it
No.
takes, three legislative things, and after they reverse this,
It'll be on the agenda next week.
Not with Mayor Foley, it doesn't. Stuff gets done.
all right.
The idling police car thing is something that I've heard a lot of questions about.
Yeah, if there's
It'd
something
be interesting to
about,
find out what the,
But I've noticed they're not idling anymore.
I don't know,
Well,
the
they-
new cars may be different. There was an issue with a computer reboot, and I don't, know exactly what that was. It's a question to ask Larry. It may have been resolved with the new vehicles, I don't know.
Right, do you know anything about that?
No, I mean, it's the reboot, it's the quick access.
Right, but
So
again,
electric
I'm pretty
horses
sure
up
they're
there.
not idling anymore out
I don't
there.
think so either.
So, let's
I-
get Larry
yeah.
to tell us how that works.
I thought they were, I don't.
No.
Unless the
I
new
think it
vehicles are
depends.
so much quieter than the Hill Street Blues cars.
There's a lot of moving parts on why it can or cannot, so, you know, instead of speculating, I
Yeah.
think it's better
Yeah,
to
it's
have
because it is something that comes up in just casual conversation.
The gas saving.
Yeah.
Now there's that. All right,
Motion to
Thanks.
adjourn?
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Thank you.
Since we're not really finished.
Yeah.
We were talking about the new Incorporation Day,
Uh-huh.
Cold Spring and all that. And, we talked about having skeleton.
Get one sec.